Hi everybody, this is Ingi from Tarot Ingi, and today we're going to talk about Three of Swords. I'm really happy with this card, Three of Swords. I didn't think much of it until the Queen of Murder, Unni Lindell, she's a famous Norwegian author, liked my picture on Instagram, so I was so starstruck I nearly fainted. And now I love the drawing. Three of Swords is it's about grief, but often unprocessed grief that we are for whatever reason unable to let go of. And sometimes it shows up years later that we get hung up in something, or something is a trigger and we don't even know why it's bothering us. But it is actually because of something completely different, something we pushed aside, something that we buried deep within us. And then we become frozen and we live in heartbreak, and it can turn into grief that is endless, bottomless, grief beyond grief. It's like a broken soul. So this card says, cut to the heart of the situation. Get to the bottom of it, because if you don't, this will fester in some way. So it often has something to do with poor communication. And it could have been a long time of being misunderstood or being betrayed by someone who you were meant to trust, missing someone, being separated from someone. And then it ends up being then a complete phobia and paranoia of getting hurt. So it's like trying to avoid pain at all costs, because the initial pain was never really processed and dealt with. So if you get Five of Swords together with this card, it can mean that someone is deliberately trying to hurt you, or that you are, because of the pain in your heart, are creating a lot of conflict around you in a way of lashing out or being punished even. There's a lot of regret seen in Three of Swords. So sometimes the seeker, if they blame themselves, then they will create situations where they get punished for what they regret. And a lot of time, especially if it is childhood, so if you're doing the Celtic cross and you get Three of Swords in the fourth position, that's childhood, then it could be that the seeker is blaming themselves, and it's a way of taking ownership or trying to control something when life has felt out of control. So then there's some belief work and release of these sort of programs that needs to be done. And also with Three of Swords, it can mean that the seeker is moving away from their dreams, moving away from their passion, and they just want to escape. But what they really need is to find out what they truly want, rather than just escape into meaningless activities. In a love reading, Three of Swords speaks of a very painful time. It can mean that the seeker is feeling rejected, that they're feeling separated. They don't feel connected to anyone, not even themselves. Like they feel out of touch. And if it is a relationship, then it's miscommunication at the bottom. Unable to reach each other. Misunderstanding, shutting each other down. If you're single, it can be then have given up on love, basically. Attracting the wrong types, the ones that will let you down. So then if you do that, it can then mean that you are attracting people that will let you down for a reason. So then find out what that reason is. And then what is the worst thing that could happen if you met someone that didn't let you down? Like, what's the worst thing that could happen if you could let your guard down? So a lot of times when we manifest the same thing over and over again, we're actually quite afraid of the opposite to happen. And that might sound counterintuitive, but the mind will work in very creative ways to protect the person, protect them from what the person is really afraid of. And it's often things that has been painful in the past. In a yes and no reading, this is most likely a no. In a career reading, this card can mean that the seeker does not like what they're doing. They really most likely hate what they're doing for a living. it can be work that puts the seeker under so much stress, it ends up having a negative ripple effect in other areas of their life. If it represents a job, it can mean that you're working with heart, so grief counselor or cardiologist. But most of the time, Three of Swords speak of just not loving, not connecting at all with what they're doing. Maybe they have problems communicating with their colleagues. Maybe they're just not able to get along. But sometimes you get Three of Swords in advice position. And in a career reading, it can mean that you are meant to understand the heart in some way. So maybe you're meant to help people who are going through a lot of grief and pain. And maybe you're the one that's going to help bring people closer together through teaching them how to communicate better. Three of Swords as feelings means that the seeker feels heartbroken. They feel isolated. They feel misunderstood. And if you're asking how someone is feeling about you, it can mean that they feel that you don't understand them, or that you are misunderstanding them, or they're missing you, but for some reason they can't reach out to you. As a personality type, this is someone who's very hurt. So they get very easily offended, and they're often lashing out as a result. It's due to their past. They're terrified of being rejected. They're often very jealous and controlling as a result. They're unable to let their guards down. But sometimes it also shows up when someone is very meek and they're unable to stand up for themselves. They often have twisted beliefs about love. Sometimes you hear people say that love is pain and love is hate, and like they twist everything around. And if this is a person that's doing this, then they're not gonna let someone in. They're not gonna let someone into their heart. And often they attract people that try to fix them and help them, but it ends up often with more heartache. This is someone who needs to go back and look at their past and resolve things from the past. And if they're seeking relationship, they're trying to make the relationship their identity, but that can often make them more anxious and more fearful. So they're in and out of relationships, and it's very hard for a Three of Swords person to settle down. When Three of Swords is reversed, you might think that the swords will just fall down or fall out of the heart, but in many ways it's like the heart is being dug deeper into the swords. So it might be even harder then to release. Maybe it's even more internalized, and it can be even harder for people to tell others how they're really feeling. It's much harder to express. And maybe also they don't understand how to even have boundaries. So this could be someone who has had their boundaries broken in a very traumatic way. And as a result, they don't even know if they're allowed to have boundaries. Like they just exist for other people to judge them. Or sometimes they become a punching bag for other people's aggression and frustration. And they feel like they have to take it, that they're not allowed to stand up for themselves. They don't honor their own feelings. They don't know that they're worthy. And in the end, they end up, in a cycle of rejection and being rejected and rejecting. When it is a person, and it's Three of Swords reversed, it can show up as someone who's very calm on the surface. Maybe they show no emotions at all, but underneath the surface it is like a storm, and they look very confident and they have a smile on their face, but it's fake. It's actually not real. Like, this is someone with a troubled past often, but they'll never tell you about it. There's often very deep-seated issues with abuse and neglect in the past, and there's no trust. Like, there's no ability to trust as a result. So this is someone who really needs to devote themselves to healing, but it's like they're never given themselves that opportunity. So something needs to really shift in their life for them to open up so they can have healing, But even when they move towards healing, people don't see them as someone who needs healing, because this is someone who's very good at pretending that everything is okay. They act as if nothing is wrong and that nothing upsets or worries them, but they learn to hide their feelings. And they suffered greatly, and they've learned to control their responses. But what you see is not what you get. So let's have a look what the runes have to say about Three of Swords. Okay, so they say the rune's actually showing me Thurisas. It's a thorn. It's like something that hurts. It's actually meant to be a boundary, but it's like when you pick up a rose and you don't take care, you're gonna get hurt. So the Three of Swords, it's a lesson in what hurts, so that you can take greater care. So Three of Swords is not always bad. It's actually there to teach you to respect situations that are going to be bad for you. That's the meaning or lesson in Three of Swords. But what often happens is that people are obsessing a little bit over all the things that ended up not working out, and they hold on to it. And Three of Swords is not meant to be held on to. It's just there to teach you about situations that are bad for you, so you don't stay in them, that you don't re-enter into one, that you quickly and easily will be able to recognize, this is not good for me. I cannot stay in this situation. So Three of Swords is actually meant to help the seeker. And I never looked at the Three of Swords that way before. It's on a more of a psychological level. So all the cards are actually quite good. Even the cards that are bad are actually good, because they're there to give you wisdom in some ways. So when Three of Swords are showing up, you can look at it as, something is coming up, and if I have the wisdom and the discernment, I'll be able to avoid something that will ultimately be bad for me. And if a situation is, maybe something is playing on your mind a lot as well, and you don't even know why it's playing on your mind. Maybe you're thinking about something over and over. Ask the Creator to make you impervious to the person who's triggering you, or the situation that's very painful to you, and that you can see the purpose of that situation without having to live in the trauma of it. That's a good way of quickly releasing a bad situation, or even a person from your life that is not good for you. So guys, I hope you liked this card, and I'm gonna now talk about Four of Swords. Bye guys.